Welcome aboard the Pilot Money Guys podcast, where our mission is to help professional pilots build and protect wealth on their journey to financial freedom. This podcast is brought to you by Leading Edge Financial Planning.
Hello and welcome to the Pilot Money Guys. I'm Charlie Mattingly. It's glad to have you on board again. Especially grateful to be able to communicate with you, our tribe, our pilot, airline pilot, professional pilot tribe. So thanks for tuning in today. Thanks for sharing the podcast as well. It's super helpful if you can go share the podcast, give us a rating and review, and that allows us to reach more people. So thank you for doing that. Also, thanks for taking the Pilot Wealth Index. For those of you that have done that, for those of you that have not, check that out. It's a way to get your score as far as, are you on track? That's one of the most common questions we get. Am I on track for retirement? Am I doing the things? What am I missing? So we put together this short quiz to just ask important questions and help you to think about those things. So go check that out. There's a link wherever you're listening to your podcast right now, whether it be iTunes or another platform. If you go to that platform, there should be a link, hyperlink right there, visible that you can click on and take that. So thanks for doing that. But today we have a special guest. He's actually a good friend of mine, but I'll read his bio real quick because I'm excited about having him on here. And today we're going to talk about just going from success to significance. You know, so many pilots, of course, I was one for military 10 years, airlines for about 14 years. But so many pilots get to this position, especially at major airlines. You've kind of made it. You know, I remember a new hire training, they were like, hey, you've won the lottery, you've made it, you know, and you're at your major airline. And that's really true. We just covered on our previous podcast, the median income for airline pilots is higher than doctors. And so that's pretty phenomenal considering the schooling requirements, the expense of schooling are significantly less. Still some pretty high barriers for entry, not easy to accomplish, that's for sure. But nonetheless, the income now is higher than it's ever been. And so you've kind of made it once you get there. I remember as a new hire sitting there in the back of the class and 32 years old, and somebody looked over and said, you only have 33 more years to go. And maybe at that time, the age was 60. I can't remember. I think it was. But I was like, wow, what am I going to do for 33 years? So it's interesting how that is a unique part of our industry, the airline industry, where you get to sit in that seat a long time. And so sometimes there are challenges that come up, such as complacency, such as make a lot of money, and what do I do with it? And so I think those are unique things that we deal with in the world of airlines, meaning you've made it early, you've got your income, now what do you do? In other words, to me, growth is an essential part of who I am, you know, as a person, now as a business owner, and that is an exciting path. And so I think you've got to work a little harder as an airline person to find that path, because not everyone is going to go into the world of corporate airlines and go onto the management path to be a chief pilot. Some may go on to be check airmen, but every once in a while, your growth path needs to come from other places internally. So we're going to talk about that today with Coach Anthony Thompson, and he is a certified coach, from the International Coaching Federation. He's also a mindset and performance coach. He is actually my coach and my good friend as well. So let me introduce him. He has over 20 years of experience in driving market success for Fortune 500 companies, high impact nonprofit organizations as well. His specialty, his niche is helping Christian business owners make more money, create freedom for their families. And he always throws in, he's a diehard Chicago Bears guy. So that's been a rough go of it for Anthony for a while. But anyway, hopefully that gets better soon. So Anthony currently is the CEO and founder of Thompson Consulting and Advising. And so that's his passion right now. He also is part of missionary groups, lead mission coordinator for the Rob Thompson Ministries. And I think just recently organized a group to Haiti with some dental professionals to go to Port-au-Prince, Haiti. And that is an incredible journey there because, it's not always the safest place to be, as many of you know. But he's also served as the mission director of Never Again Orphanage. That's in Kampala. And I think that is in Africa, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe he can talk to that. But he led a team there to teach the Never Again orphanage. And so that was pretty amazing. Again, currently CEO of Thompson Consulting and Advising, has had numerous roles in the world of consulting. One of the largest roles was with a mega church called Hillsong Church. He served as the head of growth, directly reporting to the founder, and his strategic initiatives led to basically they have a music ministry there as well. Very famous. They're on the radio and tour and do concerts all over the world. Again, good friend of mine, also works to help me as a coach. It's been really valuable to work with Anthony. So Anthony, we are super glad to have you today. Looking forward to talking to our pilot audience about this transformation from success to significance. Welcome, Coach Anthony. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I gave you this fabulous intro already.
Oh,
and I appreciate you doing this with me today. And as I mentioned in the intro, you are my coach right now, helping me and, my spiritual advisor, business coach. And so helping in those areas, which has been awesome and good friend as well. So thanks for doing this today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thanks for the invite. It's good to see you.
Yeah.
You look great.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it. I need a haircut, but other than that, I'm all right.
Well, thank God you got hair.
That's right. That's right.
You know?
It's getting a little grayer on top, but that's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, one of the things that you and I were talking about before was just this idea of the airlines. And I'm not totally sure it's specific to the airlines, but when I was a brand new first officer at Southwest Airlines, I was 32. In fact, the brand new guys and gals are like 23. It's
Wow.
Amazing.
Wow.
And so we had to hire, Anthony, we had to hire some young guys I'm not even going to be alive when they retire, put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's this idea that, I got to my airline, and they will tell you, hey, you won the lottery. And there's truth in that. If you look at your lifetime income, it's phenomenal. We just did a podcast recently where we talked about the capability of income is exceeding at this moment. The median income is higher than the median physician, which is crazy, with less schooling and school debt and things like that. But nonetheless, you get to your airline and you go, hey, I've got 30, 40, 45 more years. And I think for me, and I know a lot of people that I know, there's this thing where you get into this world of, hey, I got this. I figured it out. Takes a little while to get comfortable. Then you're comfortable. And then you battle complacence as a pilot. That's a big thing that you've got to be on guard for. Mm-hmm. But I think it also sets in, and sometimes in our careers, our lives, where we get in this rhythm and routine and we start to kind of, I don't know if it's a Top Gun quote. We can use Top Gun quotes. You lose the edge, Maverick.
We love Top Gun.
You've lost the edge.
Lost the edge.
Yeah. And so this is something I think about in a lot of professions. I think it applies. Like, when do we go? How do we go from success? We've made it. We're at the airline to significance. And that is what you and I have talked about before. That comes from inside out. That doesn't come from this external career, no matter what career it is, or no matter what our income is. So that's kind of what we're thinking about today.
Yeah. I'm with you, man. I think, Inside Out, first of all, it is a great movie. Another, if you got kids, which we both do. So I'm sure we've seen that enough.
Absolutely.
But the Inside Out, even when you just said that, Charlie, something comes to mind for me. And we know this with our food, that what you eat is kind of like what you become, right? Like, and I'm dealing this with one of my kids right now because he's a little bit older and he's been in this fast food thing. And then, the last couple of weeks, he's been not feeling well. Mm-hmm. And the same thing goes in our internal to external, with what we eat. And we know it, like we all know it. We're all, everyone's listening like, hey, I know if I eat better that, I feel better. Mm-hmm. Well, the same thing, kind of like what you're saying here is, we're looking at a long-term view. And if you want to feel better about that long-term view, you got to have the inside really cleared out and systematized in order to be able to get there. So yeah, I'm all on board with that. I wrote something in there, today that just says, where you're at is about three things. It's changing your state, then your story, and then your strategy. So it's a Tony Robbins thing. And as you know, I love Tony, and he's been a kind of mentor of mine. So, that's it. Like when these guys get in these situations, your state is a big deal. And you can, like you said, in the long haul, it could feel that way. It could feel like it's a long haul until you change your state and you decide, hey, I'm gonna look at this different. I'm gonna change my story. There's a lot of opportunities. Change is constantly happening. I know that the airline is a slower progression, but I still believe that there's always change. There's always transformation, and therefore your strategy then can change and you can see things differently, which I think is ultimately, what you're doing for all of these, clients of yours in the financial sector, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we know, and, one of the first one there, we've got our 7 keys, right? But you talked about that first one, inside out transformation. I love it. And we talk about contentment a lot when we talk to our pilot clients. And it's what I've learned is it's not necessarily directly correlated with the amount of money somebody has, which has been kind of fascinating. You think, man, when I get to this X amount of money, and I get my, millions or whatever, then man, I'm going to be content. And that's just not the way it is. Yeah. And so that's been interesting from my perspective to learn that. So what we love to do,
that's why Amazon's in business, Charlie. That's why.
That's why we have storage.
We keep buying the next thing. Yeah. We keep buying the next thing.
Every time something's built around here, it's a new storage unit. I lost my driving range. They put a new storage unit. My daughter's like, why is there so many storage units? Why don't people stop buying stuff? I'm like, yeah, that's a good question.
That's it. That's contentment right there.
It is. And I think it takes a lot of, in what you just described, intentionality. And I think, again, as a pilot, I wanted to be a better pilot. I, wanted to progress to the left seat and then maybe check airman and whatever. There are other progressions but man, contentment, it takes a lot of intention that just doesn't come natural. I think it doesn't happen naturally. It doesn't happen in the natural course of your career or your family or kids growing up. You've got to pause and make it happen, right?
Yeah. It's a choice, man. Charlie, another quote that I always love is, what's right is always available. So is what's wrong. Your happiness is a choice. I tell my kids that, I tell clients that it's a choice. And if you take a step back, those of you that are listening, wherever you're at, car, wherever you might be. And if you really took a step back and looked at what you did have and just look at today. And I think what happens is most people get stuck in yesterday about maybe what didn't happen, or tomorrow of what they're scared of what could be happening, right? The future that is scary, and we miss the present. And the present is really where the moments matter, and really where contentment is. And it's not about just not doing anything. It's about maximizing those moments, and it sounds super cliche. It sounds cheesy and whatever it may be, but those individuals that have attained what you're talking about, they've got the revenue, they've got stacks in the bank, they come back and they look at it and they say, okay, what does today look like? And what does contentment look like? And I think that's just a great question for all of us, those listening, yourself, myself. I ask myself that, what does it mean to be content?
Yeah. I think all of our little 7 keys to success, or whatever we want to call them, we probably could drill it down into like an attitude of gratitude. You know what I mean? And it's like everything I think about as far as how do I become content? Well, I need to take inventory of things I'm grateful for daily. But I think that what I just said, there's probably a solution to all 7 of these at some point. You know what I mean? It seems like that's just so key to me anyway. I think that's phenomenal. And, one of ours is, I think you mentioned like winning on your own terms, you know what I mean? And that's hard to define as well. It's like, well, what are my own terms? What am I? And so we'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, contentment's a tough one. I think takes intentionality. And so, but I do think it's like the pinnacle, of even in the world of finances. It's like, man, we don't have to have, millions in the bank to feel that way. Yeah. I think that's phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, it's true. Because just think about too, I was with someone yesterday, we were talking about, what makes you feel good. And, as much as it's about, sure, getting a new handbag, or, buying a new set of golf clubs. It's cool. It feels good for, about 30 seconds. But you know what else feels good? And Charlie, you know this because this is how you live, is when you are generous or you can make something happen for somebody else.
Yeah.
That feeling is innate in human beings. When that happens, we're like, wow, I love that. Every client that I have, every prospect I talk to, they say the same thing. I love helping people. And then it just becomes which bucket fits for you. So same thing for you, Charlie. You're whether you're flying, how you're helping people get from point A to point B, and you're doing it in a safe way and you're taking care of them. Great. Financial services, same way. You're helping people be able to live the dream that they want one day and take care of their family. Huge thing. So that innate desire, man, is it's not just the acquiring. I think the reality of it that I always notice is like, because I'm always like, hey, how can I help you make more money so that you can give it away? Because when you give it away, or you have the freedom to take care of your kids, or, you got the freedom to be able to help somebody else, that's when it just becomes electric.
Yeah. It is amazing how I think that, and you put on here, I love the way you titled it, Make an Impact, Not Just an Income. And I think it's innate in all of us, what you just said. You don't have to be a spiritual person or religious person or whatever it might be. Yeah. And I think Jim Rohn, we've got him on here quoted already, but he talked about success is empty if you're not adding value to others in some way. And I mean, that's like, wow, that's a pretty powerful statement.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. You're right on. I'm tracking, man. It is. We all know it, as much as we all crush the Amazon buy button, the reality is, we really thrive and drive on helping other people. And I think, each and every one of us has to step back and remember those moments. And that's, I think, what you said before is the gratitude and thankfulness of, even when I thought about today, Charlie, I'm like, pilots are incredibly meticulous. And I know that because I remember I told you that story about a general that my son was on a football team with. His dad was a general in the Air Force. And so we became friends, and he took me out to the local airport, and he just liked to fly, just for kicks. And so I'm like, sure, dude, I'll go with you, whatever. I have no idea what I'm getting into. But here's the thing that I noticed, and he got in his little 2-seater, one of those prop planes that they take out to get your plane license. Yeah. So I'm like, whatever. I'm in the front. We before we start going, and mind you, like, this is the first time I've been in a small plane. I've only been in planes where, like, I'm sitting in the back with my feet up. And so he gets in there, man, and I'll never forget it. He pulls this book out, and line by line, he's going through every little thing he's got to do to get all the checks, meticulous. Yeah. And I was like, wow, it's amazing. But then on the other side, I'm like, that's incredible. Like, you're meticulous. But the other side is like, you're kind of crazy to think that this pile of metal with a little bit of combustion in the back is going to sail us up in the air. I'm like, this is kind of crazy at the same time. So I always like to, put the yin and the yang with even what you do. It's like, it takes a lot of guts and whatever to actually jump in that thing and go, but it also is super meticulous to get you up there.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the other things that I love is this idea of the total health, and it's hard to do. You're on the road trying to eat right, trying to exercise, whatnot. But man, what an impact on everything else. And I think the impact is obviously, like you talked about nutrition. Hey, I work out, I feel better. But I think it's more than that. I mean, I think it's just like mental health as well that comes into play there.
Yeah. Well, it is. I mean, it's fuel, right, for your physical body, which affects your, mental. And the same thing, again, if you put junk in and it comes out the other way. And, I think I always like to mention this, and, especially when it comes to health, if you ask somebody, hey, I want to get healthy and fit, we all know how to do it. Charlie, like we have more information now than we ever have. And I also want to say this, we now have the ability, because I used to do this when I would travel extensively, I would just pre-order all my stuff and have it shipped to the hotel. depending on how many days and layovers I had as well. And so, we also have like a lot of tools that we can use to be able to stay on track and in line. And again, it just comes down to, I think these four things. First is, are you aware of where you're at, right? Like where your health is, grade it 1 to 10 and where it needs to be. 2, are you accepting that you are not where you want to be? Number 2, there's 4 A's here, right? If you want to transform and change this thing. First is awareness. Second is acceptance. The third is accountable. Mm-hmm. You really want to change your health or anything. This is the Gates of Change, mentor of mine, Brendan Burchard. And you have to get accountable, right, Charlie? Like the moment you start, if another friend of mine is a health coach, the moment, I'd start snapping photos and have to send him what my food was, everything changes. All of a sudden, I'm not adding that extra, squeeze of mayo and grabbing a couple extra slices. I'm now accountable to everything that goes in my mouth. Yeah. And then the fourth thing is action. Then you're taking action on it. So all the stuff, you're aware, you're accountable to what you're doing. Then you take the action and guess what? Your life transforms and it changes. So, those little things, they go a long way. And I just think that there's individuals listening now. Number one, they know they need to do it. Number two, they just need to go and do it. And, I always say this, Charlie, wisdom, we all want wisdom. We love wisdom. We think wisdom is amazing. And it's really simple. Wisdom is simply just knowing the right thing to do and doing it. Mm-hmm. And foolishness is knowing the right thing to do and not doing it. None of us want to be fools, but a lot of times we are because of that simple statement. And I just want to put a challenge and an encouragement, today to those that are listening is go and do the thing you need to do. Bottom line, if I could just punch you into tomorrow, I would, because you're going to be a better person because of it.
Yeah. One of my favorite things, Ed Milet says, choose your hard.
Yeah.
You're going to do the hard thing now, or you're going to do the really hard thing later when you're 80, 85, 90 and not aging well. And you built all this wealth and now you don't have the health to go along with it. Pretty incredible. Somebody said the other day, health is wealth. And
it is.
Without it, you don't have any wealth, regardless of the bank account.
Yeah.
But that's incredible. I was always surprised one time when I listened to a podcast and the guy was a successful business dude in every, the host anyway, in every walk of life. But he was interviewing David Goggins. The famous Navy SEAL.
Yeah.
And he said, David, I'm a pretty successful dude. I've meet my goals. I do this, I do that. And he's like, what else do I need to do? And David's like, get in the gym and, pour it on basically, just because, that is kind of the path to growth, I think. And even mentally, like if I can get in the gym in the morning, struggle through a workout and show up, it just confirms that, hey, I can meet other challenges.
Yeah.
I can, it helps me it's almost like a contract with myself. And if I can keep that contract with myself, then it carries over into every other aspect of my life, I think.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. What got you to the point to actually doing it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's been little habits along the way, little wins along the way, long enough that I hung around long enough to notice that when I wasn't exercising, I felt miserable. I felt terrible. Not necessarily just physically, but I didn't, I would lose or lack confidence. And so just that it seems like just been little nudges along the way here and there. And now I know that if I want to meet my goals of showing up to the gym 4 days a week, then I have to get up at 4 a.m. and that's just what I have to do.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so that's
good for you. God bless you. 4 a.m., man. Well done.
Well, it's either 4 or 5. Sometimes I sleep until 5 or 5:30. So it's one of those two, but yeah.
Get it done.
Easier in the wintertime when it's
get it done. They say there's the new statistic on this is there is more millionaires than there are people that have a six-pack.
Wow. Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it is. It's believable. That six-pack is hard.
Six-pack is hard.
I don't think it's going to happen.
Six-pack is hard.
But, the other pillars there that I love the way you framed that. There's the physical that we've been talking about, the mental, spiritual, and financial.
Yeah.
And, I'll kick off on the spiritual health. I heard something yesterday on NPR. They're talking about spiritual health in hospitals. So I was like, oh, this is fascinating. But Indiana University's health system is integrating spiritual health into their patient care. And so, it's one of the guys from the article on NPR.org. It says, IU's program begins with a doctor asking patients a series of spiritual assessment questions aimed to identify if they need something beyond their immediate physical care. All human beings have a need for meaning and purpose. And we've seen in other studies where people that have that spiritual health, they heal faster.
Yeah.
Or if they're involved in community, church, whatever it may be. And it's pretty incredible.
Yeah. I mean, when you say that, it reminds me of, which I love the book, Old School, James Allen. As a Man Thinketh is the book, right? And in Proverbs, it says, as a man thinks, so is he. And I believe that, that's a huge factor. It's a huge factor in recovery. It's a huge factor in how you run your day. As a man or as a woman thinks, so are they. And your mind is, it's fueling it all. It's giving you this programming and systems of saying, am I going to be able to get through this? Am I going to be able to make it? And controlling your mind in that area of even your spiritual health is your health. And, I would challenge each and every person listening, what you repeat in your mind, you will begin to do in your day. What you think is what you become. Yeah. And if you don't track that and you don't get it under control, it will control you. And I think we've all had those moments where, our mind was just running frantic, and it was affecting, whether it was spiritually, mentally, even physically. I know people that have been sicker than they should have been because they just believe that they were sick.
Yeah, you're right. And we've had mental health be highlighted in the airlines with suicides.
Yeah.
There's been some in the news, unfortunately, where there's some events, but man, it's not. Maybe I'm speaking for myself here, but sometimes as a pilot, you're like, I'm macho, I'm tough, I'm this, I'm that, but man, it's no joke. And people, I think this mental health thing is something that needs to be talked about, dealt with. In fact, Anthony, just in our latest, one of the latest airline contracts, they changed and just brought it in as a disability. So if someone is out on that disability, because in the past, you're kind of afraid to fess up because you're going to be immediately ostracized and grounded by the FAA.
Yeah. And
there was no essentially financial help so people weren't fessing up. And so I'm glad to see that change happen there.
Yeah. It's huge. Well, you got to remember too, with the impact of, these devices that we have in our hand, they are huge manipulators of your life. And the science has already proven that your screen time is a factor. Your media consumption is a factor. So, I hate to hear any of those things. However, those screens are going to be, they're a problem.
Yeah. And sometimes on the road, that's all you got. You know what I mean? You're away from family, you're on the hotel van, and what are you going to do? And so it's an easy trap to fall into for sure. Because everybody else is doing, you're not going to poke your head up and talk to somebody because they're all in their screens too.
Well, you tell me a quote about if what everybody else is doing is the way to go.
There you go. Yeah. Let's see. I should know a quote you're saying. Let's see.
I feel like you should have one tucked in there. I feel like there's some kind of quip.
Yeah, there should be. Yeah. If everybody jumps off a bridge, you're going to do that too. That's what my mom always would tell me.
Is that what it? Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, you just, if everyone is going in that direction, it's usually the wrong way.
Yeah, you're right. It is, man. It's interesting, but one of the other pillars, not pillars, but the other keys here we talk about is this commitment to lifelong growth, and we've kind of been talking about it in some of the other keys, but so I heard the other day, just like growth is happiness. And I don't know if that's completely true, but I was like, wow, that's pretty profound to say that, if I'm not growing, then maybe again, according to this person, maybe I'm not happy. And again, depending on what your definition of happy is, whatever. But I do think it's really critical that even if you're a captain at the airline, there's no more upgrade. You're not going to become, a management pilot, or you're not going to become a check airman. Then you still need to grow personally. We talked about emotionally, mentally, spiritually, so I think that it applies to all of us.
You're right. There's a few pictures that I have when you say that kind of stuff. One is, our life is a capsule of time that is constantly disintegrating. And if I had a picture of it, it really reminds me of just gravity in general. Or if you're in a plane, you have a certain amount of fuel and you begin to just by life, you begin to fade. Charlie, you and I, we're old enough to know that like we've been living long enough to where you can realize that your plane will steadily decrease if you don't do anything. It's a law of atrophy, right? If you're not actively seeking growth, you are fading until it's maybe too late. Maybe oh shoot, I didn't realize that was coming. And then people say, oh, I have a midlife crisis. Well, what happened was you weren't intentional about where that plane was going, and it just naturally gravity begins to pull it down and pull it down and pull it down until you're like, holy smokes, what's going on? So the picture is that, and the fix is what you said, intentionality. Where the heck are you going? And are you going to do the necessary things to get above that gravity, to get above that pull? Because our time is all ticking, where the gravity's pulling us. There's a constant weight. And so that's why, it's the same reason why you and I are in the gym. If we didn't go to the gym, what happens? Well, we know what happens. And so we go. And so the same thing with your mind, same thing with your relationships, same thing with your kids. If you are not sharpening, and we both know the verse is iron sharpens iron. So, one man sharpens another. And it's the sharpening that keeps the tools hot and ready to use.
I love the way that, you framed it this way before in our discussions. And it is, we set goals, we are intentional, like we talked about, but really all those little actions that we're doing are, in fact, I think it's in Atomic Habits. He says it's a vote of who you're becoming. Yeah. I'm becoming a guy that shows up to the gym 4 days a week. Yeah. And I want to become, a great father to our kids, adopted kids, foster kids. And that's not always easy. And so sometimes I think this way, okay, what would a great father do right now? Yeah. When I wonder what to do, that's the question I ask myself. And maybe that's part of that growth that I'm trying to become. Who am I trying to become, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. That reminds me of, I was in high school and I grew up on the south side of Chicago. And so it was really, really cold in the winters, freezing cold. I'm in Arizona now. So I paid my dues is what I say, right? I lived in Southern California for most of my life after that, but I'll never forget in high school, it was the winter, and I wanted to make the baseball team, and I was a diehard baseball guy. And so before school, my parents would, when it snowed, they'd have me shovel, and I'd shovel the driveway, which we always had to shovel before because you never wanted tire tracks, to be able to be there, and then they get frozen. And so, it's before school, man, we're like shoveling, snow blowing. And I also did something back then because I remember I was a freshman, and I started to do a workout routine in the snow where I would run sprints, and our backyard had a slight grade to it. And so I'd run, I'd map out 50 yards and I'd run like suicides in the morning. Boom, 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 boom. And mostly just running. And at that time, and the whole time I did that, I said to myself, what would a senior in high school be doing right now? And so then I would run in the mornings, and then at night I would have a workout. And then I would usually toward the middle of the year, I do a second workout. And the second workout, I said to myself the same thing. I said, what would a senior in high school be doing right now in order to be able to be the best? And I always took it as, one of those things is, what is nobody else doing that I can do that's going to upgrade my life? And at that time it was sports. And I say the same thing now. What is everybody not doing that you can do to upgrade what you're doing? And I tell you, it's not that hard when you start thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It seems like the hardest part is being creative enough to think that way, and then choosing that hard now versus, again, what might be a result later from not doing that thing. And so anyway, that's, I love that idea. And that helps shape the way I set goals. You know what I mean? It helps shape everything.
Yeah.
Because it's all about who we're becoming.
Yeah.
And so the other one we talked about, you and I alluded to it earlier, define winning and success on your own terms. And that is really, really hard.
Yeah.
It's, when you're living in a neighborhood and everybody's got the monstrous houses and the country clubs, or, to me, the most impactful financial book I read early on was The Millionaire Next Door. Mm-hmm. And now it's like the 2.5 millionaire next door or whatever, inflation, but nonetheless, totally. You get caught up in that stuff. And man, I remember flying, and I remember as a junior FO in the right seat, not making a whole lot. And the guy's showing me pictures of his, vacations and scuba and this and Hawaii, that. And I was like, oh my goodness, man. And so nothing wrong with any of that stuff, of course, but nonetheless, you feel that pressure and that envy of, man, I got to do that. That's what everybody's supposed to do. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. How did you start to define winning?
Yeah. So I think turning that stuff off, first of all, we're at this phase of our life where we have young kids at home now. We've got 2 older daughters that are gone. And so a lot of our friends they're doing the Hawaii thing. My sister, my brother-in-law, they're telling us about their vacations, and we would normally hang out with them, but we can't. Yeah. So I started kind of reevaluating, what's right for our family? What's right for us? Because we can't go overseas right now with 4 kiddos in tow and whatnot. So we did a little, I just dream. I think Ed Milet talked about that. Just dream a little bit, and that's kind of fun. And so I would do that. Like, do we want a lake property? Do we want a lake home? Or not that we could afford exactly what we wanted, but nonetheless, we were dreaming a little bit. We even drove to the lake one Sunday. Anthony, I piled everybody in the car, drove up there like, hey, this is a potential. And it was miserable. I remember going, it's hot, it's miserable. The kids are complaining. Yeah. Never doing this. Yeah. Yeah. So, it's just kind of trial and error. Do we want to travel? Do we want to? So finally, we figured out that the best thing for us was at our phase of life, whether it was something I really wanted or not, it was just to put in a pool. Let's just put in a pool. Yeah. Our kid, we don't have to go anywhere. The kids will be there. They'll, it'll give them something to do all summer long. So that was our definition, or what we do. But it took a while. I think a lot of soul searching, a lot of thinking about it, even driving to the lake, whatever. And
I'm with you there, man. I think one of the hardest things, especially for athletes, and if you've in the world of athletics at all in school, I'm a former college athlete for myself, and I know you played a bit. But when with athletics, there's a very clear goal. Or even in school, it's a very clear goal. It's okay, I need to get this GPA, or I need to get this, or there's these very clear-cut goals. And then you know what winning is. And then all of a sudden you get out, and now you're in the workforce, and what's winning look like, right? Because now you're looking at, and that's what I mean before with the screens and the social media scrolling, and kind of like what you said with the pilot. And I've been sitting around millionaires for about 20 years. And so I've sat on the G5s and sat in the back of the plane and worked around, flew around the world. And, and here I am going through my 20s and 30s and trying to figure out what is then winning for me, and you're right. You've got to, I think the biggest thing is the number one thing is you got to shut off the noise, and you have to look again, what we said before, you got to go internal to find out what is the win and what is the win for you and your life and your world. Because with all of the distractions and bombardments, it's going to suffocate any of those things that you might have. And once you get clear then on what the win is, similar to sports, once you get clear on the win, then you can easily move toward it, aggressively. And that's a huge part. That's been a huge part for me as well, is really identifying the win.
Yeah. I think that's what I was alluding to earlier when I talked about knowing what a win is for you sometimes requires an attitude of gratitude. Like, hey, let me just take inventory first of all the things that we are blessed with.
Yeah.
And then I go, oh, I am winning. You know what I mean? I don't have to continue searching something. My father was a successful business guy, but he wanted a bigger business, more.
Yeah.
And there were times, even as a young college student, high school student, I was like, hey man, you're winning. This is it. I could even see it. You're doing great. And let's just take inventory and recognize that. And that was hard for him to do, and it was very difficult.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a tough one as well. Envy is not a productive a state of mind to be in, for sure, right? It's it's hard to sometimes not do that. But Anthony, the last one I think is one of my favorite.
Yeah.
And I think it's especially important at maybe my phase of life. You know what I mean? I know you're a lot younger than me. I think you're
Get out of here.
But
I'm 44, man.
I just turned 50.
We're in the same ballpark.
That's right. But it feels like to me, it would be really easy to just kind of go with the flow and not do anything out of my comfort zone. In fact, probably 3, 4, 5 years ago, I read a book, or part of a book, called Fear is Fuel. I got a bad habit of reading about half a book and then putting it away. But nonetheless, Fear is Fuel was a good one. Started it, and it made me think about writing a list. What are things that I'm afraid of that I'm not doing? And because I didn't realize that fear in some way, or discomfort, let's call it, was preventing me from really living, a pretty good life. And so that, and I haven't done everything on that list, but man, that was kind of an eye opener for me. But I think that, talk about sharpening the saw there, that's,
fears are, whether it's the comfort zone or, I like fears. I would be right in there with you. What some of my biggest failures is fear of man and fear of failure. So for years I was stuck in a lot of certain situations, or work situations, or different situations. Fear of man, I was scared of what other people thought of me. Number one. Number two was I was afraid to jump out and start the thing or go out and do this because I didn't want to fail. And that took a lot of resolve for me. First, to identify it. Secondly, to actually go through it. And I always say fears like this. If you're driving down, I used to live in Southern Cal, so the 405 is always a easy reminder for me. If I'm going down the 405, I'm going to see a sign that says 73 North, because I was in Orange County, and that's what fear is. Fear is literally a sign. It's a sign. And that's now what I've been able to kind of reframe it as and say, cool, that's the sign I got to go after. If I see it, if I feel it, if I taste it, fear is no longer, I'm like, oh, I'm going to get away from it, which is what I used to do, and kept me stuck, kept me frustrated, kept me in living a small life. And then now I see it and I'm like, cool, I gotta go for it. I gotta run for it. I gotta do new things, try new things, get out of my rhythm. Charlie, I did something yesterday just to do that. I was going somewhere. Somebody invited me somewhere else. I said yes. I just kept saying yes. And it was just throwing my schedule all over the place. But at the same point, it was very adventurous. I'm like, cool, I'm here. And now I'm going to be out a little bit later than I wanted to be. Okay. Yes. And it was all incredible situations. And I came back home and I was like, you know what? Yes, I didn't want to do any of those. And they all were awesome because I decided they were going to be, so I'm right there with you on, fears and going for them. You got to run through them.
Absolutely. I think that's the biggest thing that I've, kind of taken away, with you and I in our discussions. Like sometimes I think too small, you know what I mean? And that's, we were talking about reading the Bible in a year that day, right? And I was like, man, I don't know about that. That's a lot. That's a big book.
It's a big book, bro.
So, but I was afraid of other time commitments or other, am I going to be able to search ESPN in the morning, when I'm drinking my coffee? And, so there was some fear there, and I was thinking too small. And I think our audience is high achievers, very successful. They've gotten, they've got a great career and they're in the 90 percenters. But boy, that last 10% or last 5%, 95, 98, that's really takes some intentionality with what we're talking about. And it really takes overcoming those fears that you talk, about. And sometimes just doing something to show that that you're not afraid. I think in our notes, I put climb Mount Whitney. I have no other reason except I know a guy here in town. He helps my kids with karate and he climbed Mount Whitney. He's like, you should do it. I was like, yeah, I should do that. I really, really don't want to, but I should.
So do you need a permit to do it?
I don't know what you need. I got to look into that. Yeah.
Okay. You got to figure that out. Some of those mountains, you got to actually scale some other ones before you get to it. But yeah, you should do it.
I know. And
it's right there. How far is it away?
It's a long way from me. It's closer to you.
Okay.
But it would be an ordeal. I've flown with a ton of folks that have done some amazing stuff. One guy hiked all over northern Arizona by himself. I was like, man, I think there's some pretty dangerous wildlife up there, man.
Oh my gosh.
Kind of crazy. But you know what? He was a surfer dude on the East Coast actually, and just lived life, man. It was pretty impressive. So
that's good. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Awesome, man. Anthony, thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun and hopefully been useful to everyone. It's useful to me for sure. I appreciate everything that you've done for me as well as a coach and as a friend. And how can people reach you if they want to, connect with you or learn more about you? And by the way, sure. I found you on Bible YouVersion.
Yeah. YouVersion was writing. I was writing devotionals there. Yeah. I got a bunch of books on Amazon. Instagram is probably my main jam where you can find out daily stuff where I put on there to, help you build prosperity and freedom. And then, just anthonythompson.org if you're interested in more. And look, God's a big deal for me. He's changed my life. I'm thankful and grateful. And it's just thanks, Charlie, for the invite just to be here with you. And I just, my biggest hope for all this, man, was sometimes I just hope that these words literally are like a Mike Tyson punch for people, because if you start to do that, them, everybody listens to podcasts. Very few do what's on the podcast, because if they did, life would be much, much different. And so my challenge is I'd say be the 1%, be the person that isn't, just consuming, but you're doing, faith without works is dead. So that's a challenge for each and every person. It's a challenge for myself. That's what is going to make you stand apart, Charlie. It's going to make your company stand apart. It's what matters. So thanks again, brother.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks so much, Anthony. I appreciate it. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Pilot Money Guys podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes or wherever you listen. We are grateful for your reviews because they encourage others to listen in. Visit leadingedgeplanning.com to learn more and subscribe to our newsletter. Leading Edge Financial Planning, LLC, LEFP, is a registered investment advisor. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where LEFP and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. For additional information, please visit our website at www.leadingedgeplanning.com. The information provided is for educational and informational purposes only and does not constitute investment advice, and it should not be relied on as such. It should not be considered a solicitation to buy or an offer to sell a security. It does not take into account any investor's particular investment objectives, strategies, tax status, or investment horizon. You should consult your attorney or tax advisor. The views expressed in this commentary are subject to change based on market and other conditions. These documents may contain certain statements that may be deemed forward-looking statements. Please note that any such statements are not guarantees of any future performance, and actual results or developments may differ materially from those projected. Any projections, market outlooks, or estimates are based upon certain assumptions and should not be construed as indicative of actual events that will occur. All information has been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but its accuracy is not guaranteed. There is no representation or warranty as to the current accuracy, reliability, or completeness of, nor liability for, decisions based on such information, and it should not be relied on as such.